Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Gaur Premanandi Hari Haribo, Jaya Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Paraprajak Acharya, Asitar Sata Shri Shrimad, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitya Lila Pavishta Om Vishnupad is Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda Ki Jai, Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Gadadhara Srivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Gira Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Brajabhumi Nabadam Ki Jai, Shri Nabadi Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Shri Nilachal Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai, their most beautiful Lord Shri Shri Rukmini Dwarkadish Ki Jai, Shri Shri Rukmini Dwarkanath Ki Jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai, Samabeta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, going back to home, back to Godhead Ki Jai, ISKCON Los Angeles Yatra Ki Jai, Brihad Madanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai, International Food for Life Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Nittai Gaur Premanandi Hari Haribo. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamadhirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our means of conquest, let us offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, who is the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly attending the Srimad Bhagavatam class and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, whose worship with transcendental songs becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're continuing our reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 20, which is a conversation between Maitreya and Vidura, and today's text should be 23? Yeah, 23, okay. Devo Devan Jaganataha Srijati Smati Lolupan Taenang Lolopataya Maitunaya Bipedire Devo Devan Jaganata Srijati Smati Lolupan Taenang Lolopataya Maitunaya Bipedire Devo Devan Jaganata Srijati Smati Lolupan Taenang Lolopataya Maitunaya Bipedire. Vaishnavis. Haribol? No other ladies? Okay. Synonyms. Devaha, Lord Brahma. Adevan, demons. Jagannatha, from his buttocks. Srijati Sma, gave birth. Atilolopan, excessively fond of sex. Te, ve, enam, Lord Brahma, Lolopataya, with lust. Maitunaya, for copulation. Abhipedire, approached. So, Srila Prabhupada's translation for this verse. Lord Brahma then gave birth to the demons from his buttocks, and they were very fond of sex. Because they were too lustful, they approached him for copulation. Please repeat. Lord Brahma, then gave birth to the demons from his buttocks, and they were very fond of sex. Because they were too lustful, they approached him for copulation. So Prabhupada's purport. Sex life is the background of material existence. Here also it is repeated that demons are very fond of sex life. The more one is free from the desires for sex, the more he is promoted to the level of the demigods. The more one is inclined to enjoy sex, the more he is degraded to the level of demoniac life. So the next verse is directly related, also has a short purport, and also I'll recite it because the next class givers don't necessarily want to speak about this. We will talk about that in our class today, why we should not avoid any topics in the Bhagavatam. So the next verse, you can put on the screen. Tato hasan sampagavan asurai nirapatrapai anviyamanastarasa kruddho bhitakpara patat. Srila Prabhupada's translation. The worshipper of Brahma first laughed at their stupidity, but finding the shameless asuras close upon him, he grew indignant and ran in great haste out of fear. So Srila Prabhupada's purport for this one, sexually inclined demons have no respect even for their father, and the best policy for a saintly father like Brahma is to leave such demoniac sons. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavade Paschyacha Deshatarine Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Unmilitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtang Snapitang Jaina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyahang Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishavangscha Shri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangsha. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandho Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosate, Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vishavanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Haripriye, Pancha Kalpatarubhya Shah, Kripa Sindhuve Evacha, Patitanang Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, where I grew up in New York, in the Chinese restaurants in those days, maybe I don't know if they still do it, they used to have a menu that was full of different columns, segregated. You could choose one from column A, one from column B, one from column C. In other words, a savory or something like that, then the main dish, and then a dessert. So you were allowed to choose one from each column, and then you pay for what you choose. But the scripture is not like that. We don't get to choose what we want and reject what we don't want. The scriptures don't work like that. The scriptures, you accept everything that's presented in the scriptures and learn to deal with it. Now, why is it that some speakers means they're twice initiated, they have knowledge of what's in Prabhupada's books, but still they come to a verse like this, they don't want to speak on it. Why? Because it is what we call in English the 2,000-pound gorilla in the room. Quite often people like to deal with the small items in life. They don't want to see the 2,000-pound gorilla that's standing behind them. It's very evident, everybody can see it's there, but they ignore. And I take care of this little thing and that little thing. So, sex life is a 2,000-pound gorilla in everybody's room. that we don't like to deal with. We like to just pretend that that gorilla is not there. At least not for me. For other people, like these guys, they just took birth, they're chasing after their father for sex. They're obviously pugla. They're obviously crazy. I am not in that category, so I don't have to deal with this topic. No, we're all in this category. We're all in this category. There are two things that afflict us when it comes to sex. One is sex desire, and the other one is sex impulse. So Prophet speaks at length about both. The sex impulse is there in us because it's there in the Supreme. And so the sex impulse is there in the spiritual world. But sex desire, and especially the way it's expressed in the mature world, is absent in the spiritual world. Why is that? Because everybody there is satisfied. Prophet famously said that the men in the spiritual world are thousands of times stronger than men in the material world, and the women there are thousands of times more beautiful than the most beautiful woman in the mirror. But still there is no sex life. Why? Because they're satisfied. It's not that they don't associate with each other. Just like the Supreme Lord has his eternal consort, the men in Vaikuntha, they also have their consorts. But there is no sex life. Why? Because they're satisfied simply serving the Lord. So they don't need to seek satisfaction in sex. And because there is no sex life in the spiritual world, there is no birth, and there's no death, there's no abortion, nobody gets pregnant there, there's no sex life there. It's not necessary. Everybody's eternally existing and eternally happy. Here in this material world, as Krishna says, everyone here is made possible by birth, and I am the seed-giving Father. So, sex life occurs here in this material world so that living entities, but it's not absolutely necessary, as we see in this case. Lord Brahma, first he gives birth to mental sons, like, who's an example of a mental son? Yes, Marichi, or most famous one, playing on his veena. Narad, yes. So he first gives birth to mental sons. Then others come out like from between his eyebrows. Who is that? Fueled by the fact that he got angry at the four Kumaras. So that anger came out in the form of Ruja. So in this way, from different parts of his body, different living entities come out. But it's not that they're created by him. These, obviously Lord Shiva is eternally existing. Narada, all of these are eternally existing individuals. But they're generated from the body of Lord Brahma. And they have different categories of... Now, anyway, we'll deal with that later on. But so these particular individuals, they came out of his buttocks, indicating that their mentality is not so high. Not so high. And again, that's not surprising, because at the end of every creation, when Mahavishnu inhales, any living entity that's not qualified to go back to the spiritual world becomes absorbed in the body of Mahavishnu. And I, as a young devotee, I asked this question because, at least where I joined in Henry Street, New York, questions were very much encouraged. Because the oldest devotee at that time was 7 years old. The movement started in 66. The movement started in 66. It was incorporated, ISKCON was incorporated in New York in 1966. So when I joined in 73, the oldest devotee was 7 years old. So they themselves were still discovering, because Prabhupada's books were not all published yet. So they themselves were, so they were very much encouraged questions and discussions, because everybody was trying to understand what's going on. So I asked this question when I first heard that at the end of every creation, all the living entities who are not qualified to go back to the spiritual world, they become absorbed in the body of the Mahavishnu. So I was surprised that, how is it if they're absorbed in the body of the Mahavishnu, they don't become purified? Mahavishnu, the supreme pure personality of Godhead, how can you come in contact? It said, anybody who comes in contact with the supreme pure becomes purified. Right? But in this case, it doesn't happen, so I was confused about that. So the answer is that the Lord does not interfere with our individual independence. He doesn't interfere. So if at the end of a particular creation you still have material desires, you remain dormant in the body of the Lord for billions of years, and you come out with those same desires. You pick up exactly where you left off. So obviously these characters who were just born from Lord Brahma's backside, they had such desires from previous existence. So as soon as they took birth again, those desires became prominent. And again, it's not shocking because we are all in that category. We didn't go back to God at the end of the last creation, so we took birth again, and probably in who knows what kind of species, but now we're in the human form of life. We have intelligence to discuss these things. And that's why it's presented in the Srimad Bhagavatam, for discussion, for understanding, so that we can, at the end of hopefully this lifetime, what to speak of not waiting till the whole creation is wound up again, at the end of this life we can become qualified to go back to God, because we've given up these false desires. So it's embarrassing for these individuals to be born and to chase after their father for sex life. How embarrassing, how stupid, as it's mentioned in the purport of the second verse. Being aware of their stupidity, Lord Brahma became indignant and took off. He said, I'm not dealing with these people. But we can't make fun of them because we're all in the same category. If we're not a pure devotee, anybody who's not a pure devotee is still affected by the material energy in the form of 6 enemies: lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, and madness. To some degree, if you're not a pure devotee, you're still... So someone may be so elevated that they're no longer chasing after gross sex, but the subtle impulse is there still. Comes out in the form of 3 things. Who knows? The 3 indicators of subtle sex impulse. Fame, adoration, and distinction, or profit, adoration, and distinction. We want these things because there's still that sex impulse. So even if one rises up very high, the classic example from the Mahabharata is Vishwamitra Muni. Previously, he was a Kshatriya. But then he heard about this Kamadhenu cow that was owned by Vasishtha Muni, and he wanted it. So he approached the ashram of Vasishtha Muni, and Vasishtha Muni, being a highly elevated, great soul Brahmana, he welcomed the Maharaj with thousands and thousands of soldiers that he came with. He told them all to sit down and I will feed you. He had this Kamadhenu cow, so he just ordered her to provide, and she provided for all of these thousands of soldiers. So Vishwamitra Muni, wasn't Muni at the time, he was a king. He was astonished that this cow can provide anything that the Muni wants. I want that cow. So he asked for the cow, and he said, no, she's like my child, I cannot give you this cow. So then he decided that I'm going to take the cow. See, this is greed. This is envy and greed at work. Envious of the possession of some other person, up to and including a whole country. I want you people to submit to me, and no, we don't want to submit, so then I'll take you, I'll kill you, or whatever. So this is going on today. It's been going on since time immemorial. So Vishwamitra decided to take the Kamadhenu, and Vasishtha, he was a sage, Brahmana, he didn't resist, but he told the cow, look, if you can, because she was screaming out, I don't want to go, he's taking me away by force. And Vasishtha Muni said, there's nothing I can do, I'm a Brahmana, but if you want to resist, you go ahead. So she did. So from her rear end, she generated these fierce warriors, and they decimated the army of Vishwamitra Muni. So he became morose, and he decided, if a Brahmana with a cow can defeat me and my armies, what's the use of being a Kshatriya? I want to be a Brahmana. So he meditated and elevated himself, became very powerful Brahmana. But because it was being impelled by subtle sex life, even though externally he was very austere, internally he still had the desire for profit, adoration, and distinction. So he was meditating with his eyes closed. Indra was becoming worried, he's becoming too powerful, so he sent, what name of that Apsara? Menaka, to disturb his meditation. Had his eyes closed, sitting there meditating, but just hearing the tinkling of the ankle bells, again, desire for gross sex erupted, and they had union, and from that union Shakuntala was born. So this is our problem in the material world. If we don't face it head on, if we skip over these verses and don't take them seriously, we'll never understand how we're being embarrassed by this sex desire. Here it's embarrassing, these newly born sons of Lord Brahma chasing after him, trying to copulate with him. But we're all, to a greater or lesser degree, in that category. It's not that homosexuality is looked down upon, but heterosexuality is okay, and one should hold on to that. No, one has to give that up also. One has to give that up also. It's embarrassing. We all have a material body. We know firsthand what the material body is made of. It's a bag of skin. The Lord himself says that. And when he was at the eclipse, Kurukshetra, and he was praising the assembled brahmanas there, he says that famous verse, that yasyatma buddhi kunape chidatake, that this material body, we're embarrassed with this body. Of course, he's the Lord, he doesn't have a material body, but he's speaking to us. Yasyatma buddhi kunape chidatake. We have this bag, which is made of skin, full of tridhatu, kapha, pitta, vayu, mucus, air, and bile. That's the body, and other abominable substances, bones, blood, stool, urine. We all have this body. We know what the body is made of. It's not unknown to us, but still, we are attracted to other bodies which are made of the same stuff. Isn't that embarrassing? It's an embarrassing situation, and that's why we don't like to deal with it, because we don't want to face the fact that we are in an embarrassing situation. These sons of Brahma are chasing after him. We are chasing after people who are not even on that level of Brahma. We're chasing after just ordinary skin bags full of bones and blood and mucus, air, and bile. It's embarrassing. And so the whole idea of Vedic knowledge is to purify ourselves of this embarrassing situation. By, first of all, sambandha again, understanding, who am I? I'm not this bag of skin full of mucus, air, and bile. I am an internal part and parcel of Krishna, and so is everybody else. Because self-realization means understanding that everybody else is on the same platform. Equal vision, seeing everybody equally. So how to get out of this embarrassing situation? That's what the Vedic culture is meant for. And that's why it's divided into Varna and Ashram. And each Varna and each Ashram has their responsibility. And when we act in that way, we are beginning to please the Lord. Vishnu Aradite Panta. We're on the path of satisfying Vishnu if we take seriously to this Varnashram. It's not that because we hear that Vaishnavas are above the Varnashram system, that means that we don't have any responsibilities. No. We do have responsibilities. And in order to enact those responsibilities, we have to know what they are. So right now we see in this room a lot of saffron wearers, which means that you're in the brahmacharya or sannyasa ashram. So we have to understand clearly what that means. There's a very nice definition given in the Bhagavad Gita. In the 6th chapter, and there's a double verse, 13 and 14, in which Prabhupada quotes the great sage Yajnavalkya giving a definition of brahmacharya. Everybody wearing saffron should know that verse. If you don't know that verse, you have to go and learn it. Because it doesn't mean that just by putting on saffron that I'm on this platform. So what does he say? What does Yajnavalkya say? Karmana manasa vacha sarvavastasu sarvada sarvatra maitana tyago brahmacharya prachakshase. So, karmana, by your work, your physical activity. Manasa, by your mental activity. Vacha, by your speech. Sarvavastasu. Sarvavastasu means under all circumstances. Sarvada, at all times. Sarvatra, in all places. Maitana tyaga, no connection to sex life. When a person is on that platform, brahmacharya prachakshase, then that person can be called a brahmachari. That's not an easy platform to reside on. Especially when, like most of us, myself included, we take the brahmachari life after being completely spoiled by the material energy. Heart full of material desires, many of which we've already enacted upon, and then you come to brahmachari life. It's not such an easy thing. Brahmachari life is supposed to start Komara Machaya Pragyo, Dharman Bhagavatamaiha, Durlabam Manasa Janma, Tadapya Dhruvam Artadam. Prahlad Maharaj. You start Komara at the age of 5. That's when brahmachari life is supposed to start. Brahmacharya Gurukule. Prasandanta Guruhotam. You go to the house of the Guru and you're trained, first of all, how to see every woman as mother. And it's not difficult for a 5-year-old boy because that's his experience. His mother treats him like a child, his even older sisters, if there are any, and aunties, all the women in the village, in the town, treat him like their son. So it's easy at that point to develop this mentality of seeing every woman as mother. Prabhupada tells the story of taking his youngest son to a movie. And whenever he saw some woman, he said, here's another mother, here's another mother. Because that's all he knows. Women are mother. And when it's trained in that way, eventually one comes to the platform where one can make a decision to remain brahmachari for life or accept a wife. Move on to the next ashram. So brahmachari is the beginning. Sometimes in ISKCON we get this wrong. We think brahmacharis are the highest. No, they're the bottom rung of the spiritual ladder in terms of ashram. So first brahmachari, trained properly. Then comes grihastha. Why so many problems in grihastha life? Married life in general, not just in ISKCON, everywhere. Because if you don't have properly trained brahmacharis, it's impossible to get good grihasthas. Bad brahmacharis who have tripped over and fallen down over and over again, they don't make good grihasthas. But unfortunately, that's usually what happens. Oh, you're having trouble in brahmacharya ashram, get married. And then they're surprised that they can't stay together with one woman. They're still chasing after other women. And so first of all, there's no such thing as bachelor daddy. Prabhupada used to make fun of that. There's no bachelor daddy in this our movement, that you remain, unmarried but you have children. No. You want children, get married. And married life is very, very responsible life. It's the only ashram in which this sex impulse can be indulged. But not willy-nilly. Right here in this room, Prabhupada said, all the women of all my female disciples are beautiful, but it doesn't mean because your wife is beautiful, every time she smiles there should be sex life. No, responsible. You have to understand what are the responsibilities of your ashram and follow them. Because Prabhupada noticed that after being married for a year or two and understanding that it's not so easy, they wanted to immediately take sannyas. So he allowed a couple to do that, one or two, but then he stopped. He said, no, stop this. You just got married, you have a brand new child, stay, complete your responsibilities in grihastha ashram, and then you move on naturally to vanaprastha and then naturally to sannyas. That's the goal. So I'm going to read just a few things that Prabhupada said, because we should take this seriously again, because we don't take it seriously, we wind up being embarrassed repeatedly. So, in this 4th canto, chapter 25, there are lots of reference to this topic because it's the story of Puranjan. So I'm going to read one purport. This is chapter 25, text 38. Prabhupada says, since there are 8,400,000 species of life, we should all know them. There's a verse for everything. Jalaja, Navalakshani, Stavara, Lakshapengshati. Krimayo Ruja Sankhya, Pakshinam Dashalakshana, Tringshal Lakshani Pashaba, Chatur Lakshani Manusha. So we should know these. Again, everything is there in the scriptures. And as brahmacharis especially, this is when you're meant to drink this up. Just your whole life should be studying and working for the Guru. That's it. Study, work for the Guru. Study, work for the Guru. No other desire. That's real brahmachari life. So Prabhupada says, since there are 8,400,000 species of life, there are also many different living conditions. In the lower grades of life, in plant and tree life, there is no system for sexual intercourse. In the upper grades, in the life of birds and bees, there is sex, but the insects and animals do not know how to actually enjoy sex life. In the human form of life, however, there is full knowledge of how to enjoy sex. Indeed, there are many so-called philosophers who give directions on how to enjoy sex life. There's even a science called Kama Shastra, which is the science of sex. In human life, there are also such divisions as brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. There is no sex life except in the grihastha or household holder ashram. The other 3 ashrams, it's not allowed. The brahmachari is not allowed any sex. A vanaprastha voluntarily refrains from sex, and the sannyasi is completely renounced. The karmis do not practice brahmacharya, vanaprastha, or sannyas life, for they are very much interested in grihastha life. In other words, a human being is very much materially inclined. Indeed, all living entities are materially inclined. They prefer grihastha life because there is a concession for sex. The karmis think the other statuses of life are worse than animal life. The karmis think like that. The other statuses, namely brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyas, are worse than animal life. For animals also have sex, whereas the brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyasi completely give up sex. The karmis therefore abhor these orders of spiritual life. So, those obviously were thinking like that. They're not grihastas, they're griyamadis. They're griyamadis. They are not following a path for spiritual purification, for spiritual upliftment, which is what this is meant for. Just a few days back, I guess, was it Monday? I think it was Monday, yeah. Or was it Wednesday? I'm mixing up my days now. Anyway, Mother Sulakshana gave class on the Bhagavad Gita, fifth chapter, text number 11, if I remember correctly. And so in the 5th chapter, which is Karma Yoga, Action, and Krishna Consciousness, Krishna is explaining what our mentality should be in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So that particular verse is stressing that human life is meant for purification. So the progressive spiritualist avoids things that will drag him or her down from making spiritual advancement. Very nice class, by the way, Sulakshana. It was her first class she's given here. And I told her afterwards, because I wasn't here, but I listened over online. I told her class was very professorial. Why is that? Because she is a professor. I think she's a professor of engineering, am I right? Yeah, she teaches engineering. So very learned, very, very thoughtful, itemized way of presenting the philosophy. So I commended her. We should all be like that. This is exactly how we should present. You go through Prabhupada's books and find every single point that he's making and present it in likewise fashion. We don't have to dream up any new way of presenting the philosophy. Prabhupada has outlined everything perfectly. So, yes. So it's meant for purification, whereas those who are thinking that brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyas life are worse than animal life, it means that they're not grihastas, they're griyamadis. And in the earlier cantos, in the beginning of the 2nd canto, the griyamadi mentality is very nicely explained. That nighttime is spent in sleeping or sex life. Daytime, simply where is money, where is money, where is money? And what do they do with that money? Simply to maintain the family. No thought of... Or even if they come, a little bit pious, they come to temple and they put a few dollars in the honey box, but what is their aspiration? That I'm worshiping you, Bhagavan, I'm giving you a few dollars, you turn that into $2 million. You see? No sense of self-purification. Still money, money. So as Prabhupada said here, just materially contaminated. So we're running late, but there's one other thing that I want to read, because I mentioned in the beginning there are 2 things. There's sex impulse and there's the desire to have sex. So in the same chapter, text number 17, all right, so the favorable conditions in the purport to that text, Prabhupada says, the favorable conditions surrounding the sex impulse are compared here to a garden or a nice solitary park. When one sees the opposite sex, naturally the sex impulse increases. It is said that if a man in a solitary place does not become agitated upon seeing a woman, he is to be considered a brahmachari. So you can test yourself. I mean, don't do it literally. Don't go out looking for... I've told the story before. It's not a story, it's a true fact. There used to be this rainbow gathering every year, and devotees used to go and distribute books. So there's actually one photograph. Somebody took a picture of an ISKCON brahmachari sitting down, preaching to a bunch of people, including a bunch of naked women. Don't do that to yourself. Use your intelligence. If there are naked women in a place, you're a brahmachari, move on, go preach to somebody else. At least somebody with clothes on. So the sex impulse is so strong. So where am I? Yeah. So the Shastra enjoin that one should not even talk to a woman in a secret place, even if she happens to be one's own daughter, sister, or mother. The sex impulse is so strong that even if one is very learned, he becomes agitated in such circumstances. So there's a nice little story. I'll end with this, based on this verse. This is a verse from the Bhagavatam. Matra swatra dahitrava navateksha sinobhavet balavam indriya gramo vidvangsang appikarshati. You should know this verse, all of the brahmacharis. So matra means mother, swatra, sister, duhitra, daughter. Navateksha sinobhavet. Asana means seat. So don't sit anywhere in private. Why? Balavam indriya grama. The senses are very, very strong. So one may think there's some foolish, maybe like these guys who are chasing after Brahma. I'm not like that. No. Vidvamsa apikarshati. Vidvan means a very learned person. Can be deviated. So there is a story, not story again, it's fact. But Srila Vyasadeva was speaking on this verse, and one of his sannyas disciples, very elevated person, was thinking, why is Guru Maharaj talking about basic stuff like this? So many higher topics we could be discussing. Why is he? So Vyasadeva's Trikalagya, he could pick up, sense that this person is thinking like that. So after the meeting was ended, this person went back to his ashram, secluded place, and it started raining and thundering. Big storm came in, and he just made sure everything was locked up tight, went back to his room. And in the middle of the night, he heard, at first he was thinking, is it the storm? Am I hearing things? But no, persistent knock on the door. So he opens the door, and there's this extremely gorgeous woman standing there. And because she'd been out in the rain, her sari was completely revealing everything. So he was like, immediately blown away, attracted. So she said, Maharaj, there's a storm. I have no place. I cannot get to my destination in the storm. Can I come in, please? I need shelter. No, I'm a sannyasi. Boom, slams it over her face. So he tries to go back to sleep, but he's thinking, this is not very nice. This is a woman. She should be sheltered. Let me at least put her in another room. So he opened the door again. She was still there. He said, okay, I have another hut. I can put you in for the night. He took her there, closed the door, went back to his own space, trying to sleep. Couldn't sleep. He's just envisioning this gorgeous woman that he saw. Then he became overcome with lust, sex impulse. So he went to the door, opened the door, and said, I have to have you. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're the most beautiful woman. I have to be with you. And she said, but Maharaj, you're a sannyasi. I'm an unmarried woman. No, I have to. Then you have to marry me. So he said, okay, that's reasonable. Closed the door. But he came back again. But I can't stop thinking of you. We have to get married. But there's a storm. Where are we going to get? No, we can find a priest. We can do it now. So in the next village, there's a brahmana. We can wake him up. He'll do the ceremony. So they're walking along, going to this village. She says, Maharaj, I'm so tired. I can't walk anymore. He said, all right, get on my back. So they keep walking. They get to the village. The woman is getting heavier and heavier. He can barely move. So finally he stops. He puts her down and turns around, and it's Vyasadeva. His guru assumed the form of a beautiful woman to teach him a lesson. That this verse that I was preaching on is necessary for everybody, because we're all impelled by this sex impulse. And the sex impulse remains there in the spiritual world, but it's not acted upon because there is no sex life in the spiritual world. Rantarashman Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.